Hello students, I am Dipanshu Kohli, your science teacher, and today we are going to study chapter number 4, sorting materials into groups. Let us first see what are the topics that we are going to study in this chapter. So the topics are, the first topic is what is sorting. So we will learn about sorting in this chapter, matter, composition of matter, and properties of material. So what are the properties that we are going to study in this chapter? They are appearance, hardness, texture, transparency, solubility, density, physical state, conductivity, malleability, and ductility. So these are the properties of materials that we are going to study in this chapter. Let us start the chapter, students. So the first question comes is, what is sorting? Let us first see the definition of sorting. Sorting is any process of arranging items systematically on the basis of certain similarities, differences, and interrelationships. We sort similar items in the same group, and we sort items with different properties in the different groups. What does it mean? That if two items are having the same properties, we put them in a same group, and if they are having the different properties, we put them in the different group. We also study the relationship between two materials to put them in a similar group or a different group. So what does the relationship between two materials means? Let us take the example of water, and if we put some sugar in water, we know that it will be easily dissolved in water. But if we take sand, we know that sand will not dissolve in water. So here the sugar and sand are having different relationship with water. One is soluble and the water is one is not insoluble. So we will put sugar and sand in different groups. Now let us see two images to understand the importance of sorting. Sorting at your kitchen, why it is done. So students, you can see the example of sorting in your day-to-day life in your kitchen also. Let us see these two images. In the first image, you can see that all the items are just randomly placed on a table. But in the second image, you can see that all the items are neatly placed in different columns depending upon the size of those utensils. So you can see that if we have to find out any item in the first group, it will be very difficult to get that item easily. But in the second group, you can easily find out any material or any item. So we can say that the first group is unsorted and the second group is sorted. So I hope now you have understood why the sorting is important. So let us move ahead. So now the question comes, what we are going to sort. We find so many objects around us. So any object around you is made up of one or more materials. So let us first see and observe some of the objects that we can find around us. So let us see the first picture. Here you can find some furniture, some table, chair, sofa, and you can see all these are made up of wood. So these are the objects which are made up of material which is wood. Now in the second picture you again find a chair, but this time it is made up of a different material. Now it is made up of a plastic. So some objects can be made by using different materials also. Also the plastic can be used to make plastic bottles. Now some materials, some objects are having more than one material. Let us see one example. So you are now seeing a duster which is used with the help of which is made with the help of wood and sponge. So now you can see that two materials are used to make this duster. Similarly, if you observe your mobile phone, you can see that so many materials are used in that. The glass is used in the camera, the plastic in the back cover, and many metals are used in the internal wiring and plate of that mobile. So mobile is having so many materials. So mobile is an object and different materials are used to make it. In the last example, we can see a pencil. The inside of that pencil by which we write is made up of graphite. The outside of the pencil is made up of wood, which help us to hold the pencil, and in the back side you can see the plastic and rubber are also used. So here you have understood that all the objects that you find out around you, they are made up of different materials. Now the question arises, how do we decide which material to use for making an object? That's where the properties of materials comes. Now let us first see what is there inside a material, that is, of what these materials are made up of. So the next topic is matter and composition of matter. Everything on this universe is made up of matter. So students, everything that you find around you, including you, that is you, all the living beings, all the animals, plants, trees, all the things, all the objects around you, everything is made up of matter. Okay, so we have seen objects around us that are made up of different materials. Now we have observed that every object is made up of some different objects, some different matters. These materials are made up of matter. Now all these materials are consisting matter. So what is the matter? Matter is anything that has mass and occupies space. Matter is anything that has mass and occupies space. That is, whatever around you can find any matter that is having mass and that occupies space is a matter. Even the air around you, that is also a matter, because you can see so many different gases are there in the air. It contains oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen. All these gases have mass and they also take space. Now we have understood that objects are made up of materials and materials are made up of matter. Now the last question comes, what matter is composed of? Matter is composed of very small particles called atoms. So they are the smallest existing particle of any matter or material. So let us read about atoms. So what are atoms? Atoms are the basic building blocks of matter. If you observe a wall, you can see that so many different bricks are arranged in that wall in a similar manner to complete that wall. Similarly, in any matter, all the atoms are arranged in a pattern to make that matter complete. The smallest possible piece of any matter is called an atom. We cannot break this atom. This is the smallest piece of any matter that can exist. And it is very small that we cannot see it from our naked eyes. Sometimes these atoms also combine together and form a new structure which we call with a different name, that is molecule. Sometimes these atoms in their smallest form join 2-3 atoms and make a different structure which is having different properties than that single atom, and we call that a molecule. And when these molecules combine to each other, they form a compound. Let us understand this in more details. So materials, they are made up of either element and compound. So what are elements? Elements has atoms of same kind. For example, we can say gold or iron. So gold is having all the atoms of gold, iron is having all the atoms of iron, and its smallest particle is atom. For example, gold. In compound, it has atoms of 2 or more types. For example, water. So if you see the formula of water, that is H2O, that is, it is having 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen to make a single molecule of H2O or water, which combine to make the full water. Its smallest particle is molecule. So now let us study it with the picture. Now you can see that I have shown you a gold bar and I have zoomed out one small place of this, and you can see these small circular structures. So these are the atoms of this gold, and you can see all are same. So these we can say are gold atoms, which comprises this element. In this second picture, you can see that these circular atoms are arranged in a similar way, but there are 2 atoms attached to a single atom. Like you can see that 2 hydrogen atoms attached to 1 oxygen atom. So this one single structure, which is all everywhere in this water compound, it is called a molecule or a water molecule. So this is the difference between an element and a compound. An element has a single atom, all the atoms are having the same properties, while a compound is having a single molecule, which actually is a combination of 2 or more atoms. Now let us move ahead in the chapter and read the properties of material. Properties of materials make them suitable for different uses. These properties helps us to sort materials into groups on the basis of their usage. So when we know the property of any certain material, we can identify that in which work or in which task we can use that material. For example, we use steel or aluminium to make cooking vessels, We cannot make our utensils from paper or cotton. As we know that paper will soak the water or cotton will not hold any water. So we know that we cannot make our vessels from paper or cotton. We need some hard metals which allows the heat to pass through them, like aluminium or steel to make our vessels. Now let us start the properties. So the first property is appearance. So what does appearance means? All the materials looks different from each other. Some materials are shiny whereas others are not. If you look on any object and the material of which it is made of, you can see that either it is shiny or it is dull. It doesn't have any shine. So this is the first property of any material. So the shine present in material is known as luster. So materials which are shiny, we say them lustrous materials, and which are not shiny, we say them non-lustrous materials. For example, all metals are lustrous while non-metals are non-lustrous. In this picture you can also see the first one is the wood, which doesn't have any shine. So we will say that wood is non-lustrous. But gold and silver, as you are seeing, it is having a shine or they are lustrous. So this is the first property. Now the next one is hardness. So hardness it means how hard any material is. Some substance can be compressed whereas others cannot be. If you try to compress the objects around you, you will find out that some materials can be easily compressed while some cannot be easily compressed. So the materials that can be compressed are called soft, and the materials that cannot be compressed easily are called hard. So this is the other property of materials, softness or hardness. Now if we compare two materials, so if we scratch two materials with each other, the material that gets scratched is softer than other material. So if we try to scratch the crayon to a nail, iron nail, we will find out that the crayon gets scratched. So we will say that crayon is softer than nail. So the first example you can see, it is a glass cutter and it is all made up of solid iron, solid steel, and some diamond is also used in this because it is very hard and it is used to cut the glass. The second object you can see here is a rubber, which is a very soft material. Now the next property is texture. What is texture? When we touch different materials, we feel differently. If you close your eyes and try to touch some different materials, you will feel them differently. Some are very smooth and some are very rough. So this is the second property. The feel of any material is known as its texture. So the surface of a flower petal and a glass tumbler are very smooth, while the bark of a tree or an unfinished wall are rough surfaces. Let us see the pictures. You can see the glass tumbler or the flower petal. If you try to touch them, you will find out that they are very smooth. They are having very smooth surface, while the bark of a tree or an unfinished wall, they are having rough surfaces. So this is the next property, texture. That is either a material is a smooth surface or having a rough surface. So next property is transparency. Let us read about this. Some materials allow the light to pass through them while others do not. Students, as we all know that we can see any object through our eyes because the light passes through our eyes to that object, and when it comes back, it creates the image of that object inside our eyes, and that's how we can see any object. So there are some objects which allows that light to pass through them, and that's why we can see through them, and those items are called transparent. The substances that allow the light to pass through them are transparent. For example, glass. Substances that allow only a portion of light to pass through them are translucent materials. For example, an oiled paper or a frosted glass, from that you cannot see clearly. And substances that do not allow light to pass through them are opaque material. So now let us understand this property with the help of a simple activity. So in this activity, I have taken a ball and I have put some water in it and I have put a coin. Now you can see the coin clearly through the water. So we can say that water is transparent. Right now the water is working as a transparent solution, as we can see the coin clearly. Now if we put some drop of milk in this, so now in the second picture you can see I have dissolved some drop of milk in this solution. Now I cannot see the coin clearly. That is, I am seeing it partially because only some portion of light is passing through it because of milk which is stopping the light. So we can say this is now as a translucent material. And if I continue adding milk in this solution, after a moment I am not able to see the coin. That is, now this solution is not allowing any light to pass through it. That is, it has now become a opaque solution. So these are transparent, translucent and opaque substances. Now let us move ahead. Our next property is solubility in water. So substances such as salt and sugar dissolve in water. Such substances are called soluble. Chalk powder and sand settle down in water and do not dissolve. They are called insoluble in water. So any solid thing, if it dissolves in water, we will say it's soluble. If it does not dissolve in water, we will say it insoluble. Now if we are talking about liquids, like if two liquids dissolve in each other, we use a different word. What are that words? Liquids that mix with each other are called miscible liquids. Liquids that do not mix with each other are called immiscible liquids. Let us see the example. In the first picture you can see that salt is dissolved in water, so we will say that salt is soluble. In the second picture sand is there which is not dissolving water, so that is insoluble. In the third picture you can see that milk is dissolved in water. Now milk is also a liquid and water is also a liquid, so we will say that milk and water are miscible liquids, that is they dissolved in each other. In the fourth picture you can see that oil and water, they are not mixing to each other, so we will say they are immiscible liquids. Now our next property is density and floatation. So students, you can observe that some substances float on water and some substances sink in water. So a substance having density lower than of water floats on it, whereas a substance with a density higher than the water will sink in it. So density of any substance is defined as mass per volume. So what is the density? It is mass per volume. That means that the density of water is about 1 gram per centimeter cube. What does it mean? It means that the mass of 1 centimeter cube of water is 1 gram. Similarly, the mass of 1 centimeter cube of iron is 7 gram. So its density is 7 gram per centimeter cube. Now as you can see that the density of iron is higher than water, so it will sink in water. So in this picture you can also see two cubes are given here. If the length, breadth and height of this cube is 1 centimeter, then the volume of this cube will be 1 centimeter cube. And you can see the atoms in it. In the first one there are less atoms, so we will say it is less dense, and in the second there are more atoms, so you will say it is highly dense. Now our next property is physical state. So there are three physical states, as you all know. Most substances exist in three states: solid, liquid and gas. So these are known as the three physical states of matter. In the solid state, the particles are tightly packed. Solids have definite shape and volume. That means that in the solid, all the atoms or molecule from which it is made up of, they are tightly packed to each other, and the force between them is very strong that they cannot leave their space. That is why solids have the definite shape and definite volume. In the liquids, these particles are less tightly packed. That is, they can move freely to some extent, to some limit, and that's why liquids don't have a definite shape. That is, in whatever container we put the liquid, it will take the shape of that container, but its volume is fixed. That is, the atoms or molecules of that liquid will not move freely to other space. Now in the gases, particles are loosely packed. Gases have no definite shape or volume. The atoms or molecules of gases can move freely to anywhere. So in the example you can see the first one is of solid. It is not changing its shape. The second one is a liquid which has taken the shape of the tumbler, and the third one is gas which is just freely moving in the air. In the terms of molecules or atoms, you can also see in the solid they are all tightly packed to each other. In the liquid they are loosely packed, they can move to some extent, and in the gases they are freely movable. So this is the physical state property of materials. Let us move ahead. The next one is conductivity. So what does conductivity mean? It is the ability of any material to conduct heat or electricity through them. So it is a very important activity, and it helps us to make many electrical appliances. All the metals are generally good conductors, while non-metals are bad conductors. So you can see in the first picture, since the metals are good conductors, we make all the wires from them, and the plastic is a bad conductor. That is, plastic does not allow any electricity to pass through it. That's why we make the outer covering of wires through a plastic, so that it protects us of getting an electric shock. In the utensils also, you can see the lid and the handle are made up of plastic, so that when we cook food, they will not get heated up, because they do not allow the heat to pass through them, and we can easily hold the utensils. Now the next property is malleability. That is also very important property of metals. So what is malleability? It is the property which allows the metals to be hammered into thin sheets. Like we will find out all the metals from in the form of ores from the mine, which are like stone or very irregular shapes. So when we hammer them, we can make thin sheets from them. Like aluminium can be turned into thin sheet, and gold and silver are most malleable metals. So in this first picture, you can see that is how we find all the metals from in the form of ores. They are having very irregular shape. So because of this malleability, this property of the metals, we can hammer them, and we can make like this iron gate and some other structures. And if we talk about some complex structures, we can make also the Eiffel Tower, only because of this property of metals. Now let us move ahead to the last property, that is ductility. So what is ductility? The property which allows the metals to be drawn into wires is called ductility. So it is the property because of which we can draw very thin wires from metals and they do not break. Gold and silver are most ductile materials. You can see very thin wires of gold and silver, and it also helps us to make different ornaments and jewelry of these two metals. So you can see in this picture the copper ore, and it is converted into a wire which we can use. So students, these are the properties of materials that you have studied in this chapter, and the importance of sorting. So I hope you have understood the chapter completely. Thank you very much.